Hey friends, thanks for taking some time here to watch this video. I'm going to try to move this one along quickly. I geeked out on last week's assignment. I geeked out again on this week's assignment. What I wanted to do today is take you through the Freakonomics radio episode that's titled All You Need Is Nudge. It's where they talk with Nobel laureate Richard Thaler, and they discuss key concepts from his book called Nudge. And what I want to do today is take some of the applications that Richard talks about and how they apply in real life, kind of go beyond some of the examples that he gives and connect in some other real world scenarios that we see these nudges and how they could take shape in day-to-day life. So a quick agenda. First, we're going to talk about who Richard Thaler is, just explore a little bit of his background and why I geek out when I hear his name. And then we're going to go through some of the concepts from Nudge that he discusses and those real world implications that he goes over and some of the ones that we've connected to other real world situations. So those are choice architecture, and then how default settings matter and they make a difference. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with nudging in policy and how these can affect the greater good of folks. And with just a little bit of a change, we can make a big difference overall. So let's jump right into it. Richard Thaler is generally known and beloved as the father of behavioral economics. He started this, really was one of the first people to study this area. He was an economist by training, but he partnered with these two guys called they're Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky. And those names actually should ring a bell. If you watched my last presentation, I recommended a book called The Undoing Project. That book was actually about those two guys. And so that's my first geek out point, is that I've heard about these guys before, I read about these guys, so it was neat to see him again. I've also heard Richard Thaler on the Freakonomics podcast before, so as much of a fan I am of his, I think Stephen Dubner, the host of Freakonomics, is also a fan. So we get to see a lot of Richard Thaler, which isn't a bad thing. My other geek out point is that, and just when I highlight Richard Thaler's resume here, he did win a Nobel Prize in 2017 in economic sciences, which is pretty awesome. He comes from, or he works with now, works at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business. And without getting into the finer details, with my employer now, we work with an asset manager called Dimensional Fund Advisors, who employs these two people who started the firm. And those two guys are Booth School of Business people. They came from the Booth School of Business, and they've actually both won Nobel Prizes in economic science. So it's a cool little tie-in that, well, probably I'm the only one who thinks cool, and really no need to explain why. But I guess the point of this is that Richard Thaler does have, quite an extensive resume, and he's really the father of this kind of idea of behavioral economics, which ties into these nudges. And again, let's talk more about how how these nudges can affect day-to-day life, not just finance. So one of the concepts that Richard Thaler talks about is this idea called choice architecture. And Thaler emphasizes the importance of this choice architecture, which refers to the way choices are presented to individuals. And he goes on by saying, by arranging options thoroughly, we can influence decisions without restricting freedom. And the example of that he uses is if you go to like a cafeteria or some sort of like kind of fast casual type restaurant, and you see that the way they set it up, they place the healthy foods at eye level. So if you're in this cafeteria, you see that what they're trying to do is they're trying to encourage folks to eat healthier or to practice healthier eating habits without eliminating other choices. So in the background, those are the unhealthy choices, and in the forefront here, we see all the healthy choices. And what that does, and what Richard Thaler explains, is that this is these nudges help us make these choices without restricting us, because we all know what happens if you take the good food away. When I say good, I mean the food that's fun to eat that's probably not good for you. People might get all up in arms. People might, resist eating the healthy food. So again, this is a way to introduce a good option and to encourage it or nudge it just a little bit so people choose that option. Another way that we do this, he does talk about it, and we'll actually talk about on the next slide, 401k enrollment. But this actually has to do with, this type of nudge has to do with the options that are available in your 401k. If you look on the right-hand side of that second picture there, That's what your 401k, if you work for an investor that has a 401k, or if I'm sorry, you work for a company that offers a 401k, the menu of investment options is going to look like the one on the right. And the one on the left is really representing, what's out there. I mean, there's a specific reason why you can't buy precious metals or commodities or alternative investments, and especially things like Bitcoin and Dogecoin and meme coin and all the other coins that are out there. The reason why 401k plans don't let you do that is because of choice architecture. They want you to focus on good, proven, long-term investments that are going to give you the best outcome. So by encouraging you to do that, you'll make better choices, and that's what you're seeing on the example on the right-hand side. I might have said left-hand side earlier, I hope I didn't, but the right-hand side, that 401k picture. So again, this is an example of choice architecture in the real world, as it does relate to 401ks, which we actually will talk about in the next slide. But it's a way that we can encourage people to make good decisions, again, without restricting them from the world of what's out there. So the second thing that I want to talk about today that the book highlights is default settings, and it's how default settings can significantly impact behavior. So the example they gave in the book is how companies will automatically enroll their employees in those retirement saving 401k plans that we talked about on the previous slide. So what they do is they automatically sign folks up and give them the option to opt out. And what this does is this leads to a higher participation rate compared to requiring participants to opt in. So like I think about when I got my first job and my first 401k plan, I remember being at the HR meeting and they would tell you about all these benefits that you get, and then they give you this form and say, you got to fill out this form. When you do, we'll take 4% out of your paycheck and then the company will match it, and that goes into this retirement account. Well, nowadays what they do is they say, hey, listen, we're going to automatically enroll you in that 401k. If you want to shut that off, you got to make a phone call or go online or fill out a form or do something. They're changing the action step. And the idea of this is to use that to create an inertia, which ultimately promotes beneficial outcomes in the end. So you think about it like this: it's easier to do nothing. We're busy. People are going along and doing things day to day, and it's hard for us to say, hey, we got to take an action step to get something done. So by flipping that action step to benefit long-term benefit, it makes it so more people do that, and they don't even realize it. So an example of this in the real world, another example of this in the real world, is with clean energy. I have a cousin out in California who was explaining this. We're talking about electric bills for some reason, and I remember seeing on my Eversource statement here in Massachusetts that I could opt into a green energy option where I'll get a certain percentage of my electricity from green sources. Well, out in California, as it turns out, a lot of the utilities out there are just the reverse. They automatically enroll people in that green energy option, and they give you the option to opt out of it. And like the 401k situation, people just don't do it. So more people, more inertia, people are doing the better thing for the greater good with just one slight little change in the way things goes. So that's another example of how these little nudges can work. And then we'll jump into one more, and I think this one's probably the best example of how these nudges can help a large amount of people with something very helpful for everyone. So the last piece that we're going to talk about is the implication of nudging in public policy. And the idea of this is really affecting, and the way Thaler describes it is just affecting large policy change that will help people, again, by creating a little nudge and implementing something like an opt-out system for people to do something that's important. And an example that he provides us is the example of organ donation. And right now in all 50 states, the way it works is when you get your driver's license or when you renew it. My 16-year-old son and I just did this. He got his learner's permit, and the question they asked, do you want to be an organ donor? And you have to check yes, you have to check no. So again, that's an action step. And even though it's just as easy to check yes as it is to check no, we don't have that inertia because we're at a point where we're making this decision and we really don't have time to research it. So a lot of times people will just check no. You know, maybe they don't know enough about organ donation, or maybe they've been misled. But it gives the people the opportunity to check no. Where in other countries they've studied this and they've implemented in other places, this strategy is known to significantly increase organ donation rates. So places that have this as a default option, again, you go to get your driver's license or whatever you sign up for in that particular country, and it says, "Hey, we're going to make you an organ donor unless you tell us not to, unless you opt out of this." So this strategy, again, it respects the individual's autonomy, but it promotes an overall social benefit. And again, it just leads us to this one little decision, one little nudge that's going to make lives better for the greater good of society. My example is nowhere near as awesome as organ donation and nowhere near as effective, but I think it's pretty cool. For the gentleman, you may have seen this before. This is a picture of a urinal, and this company Falcon, what they do is they put this little seashell on the bottom of the urinal. So when people are using it, when men are using it, they have this tendency to aim for it when utilizing the facility. And what that does is that actually reduces the rate of splash over. And it leads to a cleaner bathroom. So the facilities people don't have to clean it as much, and it smells good and looks good for longer. Again, nowhere near as cool as donating organs. I give you that. But it's, again, another example of how a policy can change. With just a little nudge, you can affect a lot of things and make things better for people all over the place. Thank you all for taking the time to watch this presentation. I hope these insights helped you understand how human behavior and decision making can really lead to policies and environments that guides individuals towards better choices without coercing them. And I really think that this podcast was a great example of how to do it. It's been a while since I read Nudge. I hope to read it again. I know in the podcast they made some updates for the pandemic, which I think will be very interesting. So I hope to get a chance to do that. And again, I look forward to reading and seeing all of your assignments and learning more with you in the next few weeks. So thanks again, gang. Hope everyone has a great night. And if you're in the Boston area, be careful with that snow out there. I hope you all stay safe. Thank you.